I always wanted an interesting life because, when you get on to self-improvement, your life becomes no longer fun and not particularly interesting, at least at the start, because all you really do is wake up, go to school or work, go to the gym, consume content, and go back home. And then maybe work on a business or some kind of side project you might have. And so, a few years into my self-improvement journey, I wanted to make my life more interesting. And so naturally, I created a system which was going to be a weekly adventure system, and I invited a friend to do it with me, who's also on self-improvement. And the idea was every single weekend, we would go on some kind of adventure. The thing is, we only ever went on 2 adventures. The first one was walking around 10, 12 kilometers from where I live to where he lives through the not the jungle, but like the forest and on the side of the road and everything, between 2 cities basically. And then the other adventure we went on was a trip to London to do a meetup, and those 2 were very interesting, and I definitely don't regret doing them. But that was kind of it. The adventure stopped, and my life basically returned to what it was before. I mean, when you think about it, it's really not surprising that most people's lives are just boring. Because what I think makes an interesting life is 2 things. Number 1 is meaningful work towards something that matters to you. And number 2 is just experiencing life. So what you could call like Instagram-worthy moments. These are things that you could post on Instagram. Maybe it's trip to London, maybe it's going on a hike, maybe it's painting, maybe it's trying something out, going on a massive road trip. These are more Instagram-worthy things. Do they mean you create something? Do you improve the world in any way? No. But they do mean you experience things, which is also interesting. And if you look around nowadays, most people, don't have work they find meaningful. They're not working towards something that they think could make the world better. They just have a job that pays the bills. And they don't experience much because they're trapped by their job, by family, by other things. Well, they could always break free, but they choose to trap themselves, which means that most people just have a boring life. And then when you have a boring life that you don't particularly like, the only way to keep you from revolting and fighting against the system is by sedating you with content, with porn, with junk food and food that makes your brain literally not able to think. And then you look around and you see, oh shit, that's exactly what's going on. And the thing is, you look around and more than just not forcing you, but the default path being this boring and not meaningful one, it's also the domesticated one. From the moment you're basically born, you're indoctrinated, especially if you grow up in a fatherless home, you're indoctrinated with this belief that danger is bad and risk is bad and you need to live a safe life and don't try things, don't jump off that cliff into the water, don't go skydiving, don't do all these things, these fun things, because they're dangerous, because it's weird, because 1,000 different reasons. And so what you get then is just a bunch of castrated men living meaningless, uninteresting lives. If they were at least interesting, then that's something. If they were at least meaningful, that's something. But they're neither. And on top of that, you get your fucking balls chopped off. You're scared to take risk. You're scared to do things that matter. You're scared to go out and live life. It's like, what's stopping you from going on an adventure right now? Like taking a backpack, putting like some water in it, some food, some money, and just putting your shoes on and leaving out the door for 24 hours. And you tell yourself you will be out of your house for 24 hours, even including the night, obviously 24 hours. Nothing's really stopping you from doing that, but you still don't do it. You know it would probably be fun, or at least interesting and story-worthy, but you don't do it. And why is that? Well, in a weird way, it's almost like you're waiting for permission. You're waiting for somebody to tell you that you can do that. But you need to realize nobody's going to tell you that. You can. You don't need to ask for fucking permission. I know that when you were a kid and when I was a kid, well, as kids, right, we're told that you always need to ask for permission. You can't go to the bathroom without putting up your hand and announcing it to everybody, like, can I please go to the bathroom? All of this shit. And you think, oh yeah, but that's just school and it's to keep the classroom organized or whatever. But there's no way that doesn't seep into your regular life, where you feel like you can't do something you like biologically need to do without asking the big authority figure for permission. Or more than that, it's you can't do things without being in a group. You can't just do something on your own. You can't be the one organizing it. You need to wait for someone to organize it. You realize you can just organize stuff. You can just do things and invite people to them. You don't need to wait for the big daddy to organize something and invite you to it. You can just go out and do it yourself. And so looking back at my life and just looking around at most men's lives nowadays, there's no sex in them. And I don't mean like sexual activity. I mean, there's nothing that's exciting. There's nothing that gets you to jump out of bed in the morning. It's just, there's no excitement. There's no sex in their lives. And that's why, like, one equals the other. You just think about it for a second. That's why men struggle to find women that are interested in them. That's why men struggle with mental health. That's why so many of the problems young men deal with nowadays is because you don't have a life worth living. I didn't have a life particularly worth living. Now, that doesn't mean kill yourself, because life has the potential to be worth living. But I'm just saying the way most men live their lives nowadays isn't particularly interesting or meaningful. Therefore, I guess worth living is quite a harsh way to put it. What's a better way to put it? I don't fucking know. But you get the point. And if you have the right predisposition, you'll think to yourself, instead of just despairing and saying, oh, he just said life has no meaning and where it's not worth living, you should think to yourself, yeah, I guess my life is kind of shit right now. But he's kind of hinting at the fact that you can make it better. And that's exactly what happened. Well, not for a few years, but it was at the start of this year that I decided to implement a new system. And the way I did it was basically, I kept the weekly adventure thing. The only tweak I made was that every single week, by default, I would go to a city by bus or by train with a laptop and just work in a coffee shop or in a park there. And that would be my default weekly adventure. And you might think, okay, well, that's not very adventurous. You wouldn't be wrong if you said that. But it's at least something, and it has the potential for turning into an adventure. Why is that? Because by actually going out of your house, which is the only way to go on some kind of adventure, because adventure implies risk, by going outside of your house and going to a city, you're going to have to travel, you're going to have to talk with people, you're going to have to meet new people, interact. And on top of that, you can invite other people to it. You can say, hey, to a girl for like a date, or to a guy if you want to do something together, I'm going to this place on Saturday, do you want to come with me? And it's more of like a springboard for adventures. But what I've also noticed is that, well, actually I should finish what the system is. So you have the weekly adventures, which can be just once a week, something that is worth posting on Instagram, which isn't why you should be doing it, but it's a good metric for whether something is interesting and actually adds to your life experience. We're not doing this for social validation. We're not doing this to get more likes on Instagram or anything. It's more about building a life that is actually interesting and experiencing things that increase your wisdom and make you a more lively, experienced person, right? The second part of the system is quarterly epics. And what these are is, instead of just a day trip or like a few hour kind of thing once a week, it's a multiple day long or like a week long adventure once every 3 months. That's why it's called a quarterly epic. And the idea for this is basically a weekly adventure, but on steroids, because you're going to have a shit ton of adventures inside of one epic. That's why it's called an epic. And so when I implemented this, at first I was obviously a little skeptical, because I thought, well, yeah, I did this before And it worked for a bit, but then I don't know why it stopped working. But I've got to tell you, from the moment I started this, I've not had a single boring week. And again, this isn't to be constantly stimulated, but what this is really about is the growth that you get from all these experiences. The fact that I haven't had a single, let's say, boring week or a week without some kind of adventure or sex in it means that in these past however many months, 4 months now, I've grown more than I think I've grown in the entirety of the past year. So I set up the system right before New Year, and I realized that I had one free week after my exams where I decided, without asking anybody, without thinking about it too much, or at all really, I just went online, found train tickets from where I live to Paris and back, and I booked them. It cost me around $50, which is extremely cheap. Extremely cheap, it's pretty cheap, especially to go to such a nice place. And I didn't book hotels. I didn't actually have a hotel until maybe a few days before leaving. And I just booked my tickets. And that way I thought, well, there's basically no backing out of this anymore. I'm going to Paris for 1 week. And actually, no, now that I think about it, I only booked a one-way ticket because I had a rowing championship in Paris anyways, but a week later. And so I combined that because the people organizing the event would get me my tickets back. But the part about not having a hotel until the very last day basically is true. And I just booked the ticket and I thought, well, worst case, like if I really can't do this for whatever reason, it's just, I think it was actually $25. Yeah, because one way is $25. But best case, I go and I have a really cool time in Paris on my own, just doing whatever I want. And that's basically what I did. And then from there, well, I met my girlfriend, and so that means I go to Paris more often now. And yeah. So that part worked, the quarterly epic, and in fact, I would consider that in the past 4 months, which is basically just one quarter, I've gone on around 4 to 5 trips that could have been considered quarterly epics, which I think, like now that I think about it, is like a better amount, because only one of these trips per 3 months is not very much. But it really depends on obviously having the means to do it, and then also it not detracting from the work you're doing, the meaningful work you're doing. And then in terms of weekly adventures, I mean, it's not very hard to tick off the box. I never actually ended up doing the taking the bus to the big city to do work, but it's more of the mindset of telling myself that I will do this every week no matter what. And I basically it's good to just have a default thing you can go to, but then from there you will, like, I don't know why, I think it's because I set the goal to have interesting weeks, that my brain just naturally gives me ideas for, oh, you could do this week, oh, you could do that next week. So for example, it might be playing tennis with a friend, it might be a 60-kilometer bike ride, which I did not too long ago. It could be going to a lake and swimming for like a picnic and swimming. It could be all these different, like a date. All of these things technically count as some kind of weekly adventure. And I mean, if you want to see the proof, you can just go to my Instagram and you'll see, well, as of today, there's only 2 posts, and those are from this year. They're both, like, they could both be quarterly epics, but I've done around 10 of those, and I'm gonna start posting more of them on Instagram now, so you can go follow that. If you don't know me, my mission is to lead the world to enlightenment. You can join the movement. You can subscribe to this channel for more content like this. Instagram is for more lifestyle. And there's also the podcasts or the sermons, which are once per week on Sunday. And they're deeper philosophical ideas that are the, let's say, the underlying principles that all of this stuff is based on. Because this is the more like concrete, actionable stuff. The podcasts are more the underlying principles. They're for more advanced people, so you can look into that if you're interested. But yeah, subscribe, join the movement, and I'll see you in the next one. Mwah!